Okay, we are live. Welcome Thursday morning. I am Angela Hughes and I am here with Joel Staley, who is a veteran communication consultant who's worked for some of the largest public relations firms around the country, including Walt Disney World, where you were the PR director. And he's also been on board working with the Mexican Tourist Board and Visit Orlando. And so you have a wealth of experience. Welcome, Joel, to my live Facebook show.
Thank you.
Tell us what you're all about. Whoops, I just put my iPad right in front of the camera. That was God's Sometimes these don't go well.
No problem. And I want to make sure people know that I wasn't the PR director at Disney. I was one of. So
one of. Okay.
That's
well,
right.
We can make you the PR director, so you can be anything on these shows.
Well,
okay.
I'm pretty good at being who I am. Don't ask me to play anybody else. So I'll stick with that role.
Okay.
Well, basically, you set me up great in terms of that introduction. I appreciate that. I've worked for huge PR firms like Edelman and Burson Cohn & Wolfe, but I've also worked in-house for Disney.
Yeah.
And for a national law firm, and clients have been like you mentioned, the Mexico Tourism Board. So I've had a lot of experience in the travel industry and in other industries, and I try to bring that experience and that skill set to my clients. And I recognize that when I was working for those large agencies, that sometimes small and mid-sized businesses would approach us, and I could see 100 ways to help them, but they would often shy away from the large agency fees. It didn't match their budget. And so I thought, if I went out on my own and I was a consultant, I could help these people and I could do it in a way that would fit their budget. And so that was the genesis of me becoming an independent consultant.
And so tell me a little bit, okay, what does a communications consultant, I don't know if everybody in like the little studio audience in the world knows what a communication consultant does. I do, but when you were, PR seems like it's like this really broad field and how does it work for, everybody?
Yeah. Well, let me kind of take it up to a high level and then give you some specific examples of what that means. And so communications, when you help organizations, you help them communicate to the audiences that are most important and critical for their success, whether that's your clients that you're helping or whether you're working in-house. You're trying to get to those audiences, those publics that mean the most to your organization. And how do you do that? There are a lot of ways to do that. Media relations is one of the ways. And so I have relationships with editors and reporters, and I pitch story ideas about my clients to those editors and reporters.
Okay.
A positive story about you in a publication that your clients or the prospects that you're going after read, that can do a lot for your business and your reputation. So that's one way. Crisis communications is another. If something goes wrong, how do you talk to people about it? And how do you show that you're trying to make it right? That's an skill set that I have. And so that's another aspect of public relations. Helping people refine their brand. A lot of times people, they kind of know who they are, but they haven't taken time to really put it into everyday accessible language. So helping them do that and helping them to communicate that to the audience in a way that's meaningful.
Okay. And so since I work with the travel industry, and I consult travel agencies on the side, but also own my own travel agency. Talk to me about that a little bit. Just the branding piece right off the bat. Yeah.
Well, brand it's who you are. You want to be able to communicate that. You need to think about your brand in terms of attributes. What are the attributes of your business that you want to make sure that you're known for?
Yeah.
People think of you. What are the 2 or 3 things that you want to be up here at all times about you and your business that would make you desirable to do business with, and that would make you different than your competition?
And so when somebody's a personal consultant, should they be branding themselves or their business or both? What's your take on that?
Both. They need to be intimately involved in creating their own personal brand. And as they become more sophisticated in that approach, I definitely recommend reaching out to a consultant, someone who's an expert, who's a professional, who can help them shape that.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things, like when you're working with someone right in the beginning, what are some of the things that you immediately zone in on and you say like, you need to fix this and this? Because I think in my mind, in most people's mind, they think like, and this could go for any small business. I know that there's other channels watching this today that's just not in the travel business, that might just be a small business or even a large business. But do you just go straight for logo and overall look, or is it the whole message? How can you break that down a little bit?
It's the whole message. And the first
Mhm.
thing that I do is I sit down and I do deep dive interviews with the owners and the leaders of the business. And I try to get to the heart of, what do you want to be known for? And typically what happens is when they tell me that, and there's some consensus built on that, I then do an audit of all of their communications, their current communications. I say, well, if this is what you want to be known for, you're in trouble, because that's not what you're communicating in your ads, in your news articles, on your blog site,
Yeah.
on your website. All of those things need to be consistent and unified in communicating those 2 or 3 main attributes that you want to be known for as a business. And so I help them get their communications aligned so that they can be more powerful.
How can we move that towards like a travel agency now who is working on zero finances because they've been decimated, and they're,
Sure.
I mean, I feel like everybody in my industry is going, what can I do to, shape up and look better for 2021 now? Nobody's really anticipating selling in 2020 anymore. Now they're like, I'm going to rebrand, I'm going to rebuild, but I don't really have any finances to work with. Perhaps I can't afford to come to Joel or myself. And so what could just an individual do if you were going to give some advice out there? Like the number one thing that they should maybe focus on right out of the,
I would say 2 things. First, make some decisions. Make some decisions about who you are. You can't be all things to all people.
Mhm.
Have conversations with someone and you try to be all things to all people, they walk away not knowing what you are at all. But if you powerfully and purposefully focus on 2 or 3 things, and
Mhm.
the things that you'd like to be known for, whether it's a destination, whether it's a type of travel, whether it's a price point, then they can walk away with those 2 or 3 things. They'll know, and they'll think of you when it comes to those things. It doesn't mean that you're limited in terms of what you can offer your
Mhm.
client. Clients will know you for certain things, but they'll ask you for everything, and that's fine. So that's 1. 2, if you don't have a huge budget, we live in the internet age. Take
Right.
advantage of the internet, take advantage of social media, and communicate and push your message about yourself and your brand that way. So those are 2 bits of advice that I would give anybody who feels they don't have a good budget and doesn't know where to start.
Okay, so if you're out there watching, and I know this is being broadcast in multiple groups today, ask your questions, because Joel's going to take some live questions throughout this, and we'll flash them onto the screen. Okay, so let's go to one thing that I know you're really good and really super crystal clear about, that you teach a lot, is just knowing who your audience is. Tell me a little bit about that and what you mean with
Yeah,
that.
well, I recently wrote an article for Insider Travel Report, which is a
Mhm.
travel agent magazine. I'm sure many of your followers are familiar with it. And that was the number 1 tip that I gave, is know your audience, know who you're talking to. And what does that mean? In terms of a travel agent, you've got to know your customer.
Yeah.
How do they like to be communicated to? Is it text? Is it email? Is it through social media? Figure that out and make sure you keep careful records about what they prefer and that you follow those preferences. Know their preferences in terms of travel. Don't suggest things to them that you should know that they are not interested in.
Right.
Keep records and make sure that you customize your recommendations and your service to them in a way that they have stated they prefer. So that's it. You got to know your audience. That's the number 1 rule of communications. That's the number 1 rule of being a good travel agent.
Okay, so the number 2 thing that you love to talk about is transparency. And
For
I love
sure.
transparency because I'm always kind of preaching to my own choir. People need to know who you are. So my life is so out there, in so many different channels and avenues, and it's just out there. So
Yeah,
what do you
well,
think about
it doesn't
transparency?
necessarily mean you have to live in a glass house and
Yeah.
walk around naked. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about. We'll get that in focus here. So
Okay.
what I mean by transparency is help your clients understand your motivations. When you're making travel recommendations to them, make sure that they know the factors that went into the recommendation that you're making. Make sure that they understand the limitations that are placed on you. Sometimes you could say, hey, I can't book you at that hotel this year, so let's get you in another hotel. And they're going to be like, that was my favorite hotel. Why can't we go back there? You need
Yeah.
to be upfront about, we can't book you there because they're having X and Y problems that are related to COVID, or they shut down, or they're having maintenance issues. I know you love there. I've checked it out for you, and we're going to have to go with a different place. That's the kind of transparency they need. If you're recommending something, make sure they understand the fee structure and the commissions that might be associated with it. You don't want them to think, I'm pushing them to this travel option because that's going to make me more money.
Well, that's a big area where people have struggled is they haven't been transparent with their fees or where they get paid. Just for a lot of my viewers know that I immediately always have a Zoom dialogue with people before I even consult with them and lay out exactly how we operate and what value I bring to the table and what my fee structure is. And then they can make a decision right there. And that's something, if you're not implementing fees, you guys out there, you need to be implementing fees. And then I also let them know we're also paid through the suppliers as well. And so they know where like the revenue source is coming from. And I think it brings more value to just the overall conversation of things.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And then on the tail end of that, when it comes to transparency, if you make a mistake, here's the number one rule. Corporate communications follows this rule, and I recommend you borrow it. Don't defend your mistake. Instead, explain it and show what you're doing to ensure that it won't happen again. People understand that mistakes are made. And if you're sincere and honest in your efforts in correcting it and making things right, they can forgive you and they can keep working with you. You haven't broken their trust, right? Because you didn't try to deceive them like somebody who's covering something up. That's the worst thing you can do if you make a mistake, is to try to cover it up. We live in the internet age. Everybody has in their smartphone a broadcast television station, for Pete's sake. I mean, you can give an eye. The truth is going to come out. Don't try to hide it. The worst scandals in history have happened because people have tried to cover things up and deceive their audience. And when people feel deceived, that's it. The relationship's over. No matter how good your offer or your discount or the deal that you're offering, they don't want to do business with you because they can't trust you.
Yeah, and that's a point that I talked about on my Luxury Travel University channel last week, is honesty and integrity will always get you further than
100%.
Yeah. Okay. I know that you're a huge advocate of being the ultimate source of influence or of information.
Yes.
And I'm a big advocate of being authoritative online and in your communications as well. So give us a scoop on that one.
Well, what I mean by that, and I hope that this doesn't cause stress to people, it doesn't mean that you've got to run out there and you've got to be the know-it-all. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is be the source of information. You need to be like a curator at a museum. A curator brings to the museum great displays, great information. Did the curator make up that information? Did the curator find those? Was he Indiana Jones off in the jungle finding those artifacts? No. They bring great information to their patrons, and the patrons love them for it. So you, as a travel agent, be a great travel information curator. You go out there and you find great information and you make sure that you share it with those that are your customers. That's what I mean by be the ultimate source of information. The other half of that is when there are restrictions. We live in the pandemic era right now. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you're the first to know about it and that you know everything about it and that you're accurate. Get accurate information and communicate that the moment it happens to your customers. Make sure that they continue to see you as a great source of information. Now, what'll happen if you don't? Well, people want information and they want the right story. And so if you're not giving it, chances are they're going to find somebody else who is.
How do you feel like, I mean, you've been with me in some of these, big tourist bureaus and so forth. How do you feel like the industry as a whole has done in communicating things? I mean, there's a big argument that they haven't been transparent enough with us. And I feel like that's something that's constantly going on, like be more transparent, be more transparent. So what's your thought?
Yeah, I can see that there's a temptation to not be transparent because in the travel industry, we have a lot of attractions. We have it's like a show, right? We want to put on a good show. We don't want to show our dirty laundry. And so there can be the temptation to hide that or shove it under the rug. Mm-hmm. And I would just continue to remind people, think ahead. It's going to be found out. And then you're going to look terrible. People can understand if you are upfront and you're transparent and you explain. People are reasonable. They'll understand. It's about trust. If they see you withholding information, they're not going to trust you and they can't do business with you. Yeah. Be forthcoming. Prove to them day in and day out that they can trust you and they'll continue to do business with you.
Okay. What do you mean when you say have a plan B?
Plan B. Well, so here's our next point. In corporate communications, we often do something called scenario planning. And that's a fancy word for having a plan B, a backup plan, right? So what I would counsel travel agents to do is, as they work with their customers and their clients, they're planning this great itinerary, have a plan B, especially in this COVID-19 environment. Have a plan B. Things change. So this is what would ideally happen. Your clients would be out on a trip, on a vacation. Something changes, but you anticipated it. And so you instructed them, hey, if this happens, it could happen, then here's plan B. Just do this and you'll be fine. And so what will happen? The customer will say, hey, oh my gosh, everything's changed, but you know what? It's okay. Our agent, who's fantastic and we totally trust, told us this might happen and told us that all we have to do is X, Y, and Z, and we'll be fine. Right. The travel experience is saved. They're still going to have a great time. But on the contrary, if you don't prepare them, if they don't have a plan B, suddenly they're going to hit a roadblock and they're going to go, we're stuck. We don't know what to do. And then you as a travel agent, you're going to get a call either late one night or in the middle of your weekend. And it's going to be an emergency. You're going to have to jump through hoops to try to help them then. And then the worst thing is that when they get done with this and you're working on the next trip and you try to recommend something new and different, they're going to be gun shy because they got stuck with you before and you didn't give them a plan B.
Okay, you guys, I have to apologize up front. My lawn crew just showed up, and so they're a little loud outside. That's the beauty of like the home office, is that now you have a crew outside doing my backyard. And so I'm going to be very transparent about that if you're hearing additional noise. Okay, focusing on the outcomes. Many of us don't know what the outcomes are going to be right now because we don't know what the future even holds. And we're seeing an economic rollout happening, cruise. Just this morning, a big, the shareholders of like 3 different cruise lines in Asia announced that they weren't going to pay out and that they were going to withhold funds and everything. And that kind of sends a rippling effect of just like panic. And so how can every travel advisor and every, we've got other, just not agencies on here, but we've got tour operators and small businesses and DMCs. How can they focus on the outcomes when the outcomes are so unsettling right now during this time?
It's true. We live in some uncertain times, and so that's going to be difficult. That's why, going back to my previous advice, be transparent, have a plan B. Those are all really important. What I mean by focus on outcomes is, in the corporate communications world, we spend a lot of time creating press releases, right? Or putting together a video or training somebody to be a good spokesperson. Those are all outputs. Those are all tools. Those are all a means to an end. The outcome that we want is a great news story that goes viral and gets picked up and is in front of every set of eyeballs that our audience owns. That's a great outcome. The client is happy. That's a great outcome. For you as a travel agent, your client having a great travel experience, that's the outcome you seek. Now, I know we work a lot on itineraries. We book all of this travel. We set everything up. Those are all tools. Those are all a means to an end. Don't get so caught up in those and saying, hey, I did my job, pay me. The outcome that you're looking for is a great travel experience. And so you need to do everything you can when your clients are out traveling to preserve that great travel experience for them. If that means, quickly having to rebook something that got canceled, helping them, you set up the plan B, so now you're going to help them go through with plan B so that they can still have a great experience. Whatever you can do to preserve that travel experience, that's the outcome you're looking for. And that's the outcome that will keep your client coming back to you and maintain loyalty to you as their travel agent. So guard that experience, that outcome jealously, and don't do everything you can to protect it and make sure that they always have a wonderful time, no matter what happens.
And I want to go back to when we were talking about being the ultimate source of information for a minute. How can they tie in like client experiences into their communications? Like I know I reuse a lot of, comments and things that people, everybody uses a testimonial, but do you have any like just off the cuffs, steps that people can use to not necessarily tout themselves, but become more authoritative?
Sure. Well, it's kind of going back to that museum curator comparison that I made. The information doesn't have to come from you in order for you to be seen as credible and authoritative in your customers' eyes.
Right.
curate great information, bring great information to them. And in this regard, one of the things that I said in the article that I wrote was leverage third-party experts. So there are great bloggers out there that write all about the destinations that you book frequently.
Mhm.
There are great websites where you can find information that the destination shares. Whatever it is, leverage those experts and be transparent about it. Let your customers know, hey, I found on this blog site some fantastic information, and I know you're interested in this particular destination. I wanted to share it with you. Here it is. Put this on your social media channels. Become that, bring to them that great third-party information. Now, you may have been making recommendations all along, and you're their travel agent, so they do trust you. But if suddenly there's somebody else out there who's seen as a national expert who's saying the same thing, make sure you bring that information to them and share it with them.
Okay.
That improves and bolsters your credibility in their eyes. Well, gosh, Angela told me X, and look at this. The national expert said the same thing she did. Wow, she must be really smart. So that's what I'm talking about. And then national experts are great, but sometimes the most important expert is a relatable expert. It's a person just like yourself, a fellow consumer. And so if you're working with some clients and they're expressing interest in a particular destination, ask yourself, do I have clients that have already visited that destination and had a great experience and could talk about that? And I am a great advocate of video. Bring them in, sit them down, do an interview with them and capture that on video, and then post that video on your blog or on your website, or just send it directly to the clients that you know are interested in the same destination. Them hearing your current clients, who are consumers just like they are, talk in glowing terms about that destination is going to do more good for your credibility and for the desire to book with you than almost anything else you could do.
I actually love that idea so much. I mean, that takes a little bit of work, but we're kind of in that environment now where, you could easily do that. So
the great thing about it is once you've done it, it's not a one and done. You can reuse that video again and again and again. You're going to get a lot of value out of that. So it's worth investing your time.
Yeah. I just like repurposing blog information, testimonials, Facebook posts, third-party information. You can pull them in so many ways. Okay. You are amazing, but how did you become so amazing? Tell us. I mean, what was your whole path?
Well, I guess the reason that I got into public relations and corporate communications is that I'm a person who always asks why. Why did that person choose to do that? Why did they make that decision? And communications is about being influential. It's about understanding why people make decisions and looking at ways that you can use to, with integrity, influence those decisions. And that fascinated me. And so I got into public relations and corporate communications for that reason. My first real job in communications was I was an intern with Walt Disney World in Orlando. That's where I'm from. And so I worked in their publicity department, and I helped news crews that were coming in from all over the world. I speak a couple of different languages, and so I was helping them in Spanish and in Portuguese and in English to do news stories about Walt Disney World. So that's how I got my start in corporate communications. From there, I worked for a variety of different agencies. One of the things that I noticed early on was that I was working for a boutique agency, and I just wasn't getting the experience nor the exposure to global brands that I wanted. And I wasn't getting the leadership opportunities that I wanted. And so I began looking, and I found Burson Cohen & Wolfe in South Florida, and I knew that they offered that. And it's a long story, and I won't bore you with the details here, but eventually I kept my focus on them, and I worked my way into getting a job with them, not because they were going to pay me better than everybody else, but because I was going to get the right experience with them.
Right.
I learn more things about my industry through working with them and their clients than I would in other places. And so I worked for them for a number of years. I came back to Disney. I was a PR director at Disney. There's in my book, there's nobody who embraces living your brand better than the cast members at Disney. It's a fantastic place, and I learned a lot about branding while I worked there.
Well, and I think that goes more towards culture, the culture of the company, because I feel like that kind of comes from the top, that they, right when you come in, that you're going to be the brand there.
That's right.
And
well, it's a great thing. A book that I read long ago that helped form my views and thoughts on brand is Brand Manners. And it's by a guy by the name of William Gordon and Hamish Pringle. These are the two authors. And their theory on brand manners is that the brand exists, and we make all of these promises about the brand through our communication, whether that's advertising, public relations. We say through those means that if you come and you do business with us, you're going to have this kind of experience. You're going to get these kinds of services and products, and you're going to love it. So those are the promises that we make. And then people come and say, well, I like those promises. That's what I want. They go business with you. If you deliver on those promises, you're going to keep them as a client or as a customer. If you betray those promises, they're going to be disillusions and they're going to go find someone else. Now, who delivers those promises? Well, in many cases, think of like a big box retailer. It's the person at the checkout. It's the person that's helping you in the aisles if you have questions, or it's maybe their customer service phone bank that you dial into. And when you do that, you're talking to somebody, lamentably, in many cases, who doesn't have good training and is poorly paid and is betraying the millions of dollars that that company has invested in its brand by giving you poor service. And then the customer says, well, wait a minute. I didn't get anything I was promised in your ads. I just got this jerk across from me who's being rude to me and isn't helping me with my problems. I'm out. And so that's the kind of brand concept that I want travel agents to understand. Now, how does Disney understand that? Very well, better than anyone. Before you even set foot on the stage where you're going to be performing your role for Disney, everybody is a cast member, right? Because it's a show. Everybody has a part to play. Everybody has a role. Before you even go and put your costume on and greet any customers, you go to a full day of training that they call traditions. And they help you understand all about who they are, what they are, why they do it, and what those great outcomes ought to be, how you deliver great guest experiences. And they show that no matter where you are, whether you're the janitor sweeping the streets of the Magic Kingdom or you're selling ice cream over in Epcot, that you have an ability to affect someone's vacation in a positive way. And people love that. They love it. And a part of the Disney brand is Walt Disney himself and his philosophies. And people love Walt Disney. They don't want to let Walt down. And so they do a great job of training people up front and then putting them out where they have continued training and they have great examples from other cast members. And they have the opportunity to really make magic, as they say, for the guests that arrive there. And so they embrace the brand. And the brand manners come in their behaviors. How do you behave if you are part of the Disney brand? They know how to behave. They're trained very specifically how to behave and how to do things that help further the brand. What's the brand language? They know very well what the brand language is because they're given scripts that tell them just what to say in those moments to help guests and make guests have great experiences. And so they are able to deliver on the brand. They have great brand manners, and they embrace the brand so much they become ambassadors for the brand. They promote the brand themselves, even when they're not at work, because they love what they do and they love the organization that they work for. And so as travel agents, many of you own small businesses and you have a handful of people work with you, some more than others. Teach them who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Why you're in the business and why you do what you do. Give them the right language and show them what the right behaviors are for them to be able to deliver on your individual company's brand to your customers, and to hold them accountable for it. Work closely with them in their performance reviews to make sure that they are using the language and that they are using the right behaviors.
And it really quick, because I feel like a lot of agencies work with like 1099 contractors, and so there's so many like IRS rules, and
That's true. But you 99 contractor, I would say still hold a performance review with them. Still offer them the same training that you would if it were somebody who was internally employed with you. Again, outcome. What's going to get you that right outcome? The training will get you the right outcome. The work with them, the holding them accountable will get you the right outcome.
Here's one of my biggest questions of the day, because I run the Luxury Travel University group. And if you're not in that group, join me in that group, please. And if you've got questions today, shoot them to me right now. You don't even need to leave your name like the little StreamYard thing says. I can see your questions come up. I just can't see who said it. And Joel will be answering those because we only have a few more minutes. But if someone wants to move from just selling mass market products into more of a luxury sector, what's your advice on that?
I would say two things. You need to know your product. You need to, again, like we talked about before, position yourself as the ultimate source of information about those luxury products. And then the second part of that is know your audience. What do they care about? What do they want? Where are they? Where do they get their information about travel? And see if you can't show up in that space as positioned as somebody who knows about the type of travel that they want. And again, assiduously guard your brand and your reputation. And we've talked a lot about social media and the internet, but those are tools. And it's not a strategy in and of itself. You need to get out. You need to find where these people who you think would buy your products operate, where they live, where they do business. And you need to find a way to show up in their world and get to know them and develop relationships with them and help them understand who you are and the type of information and services that you offer. They might not engage with you right away, but take a long view and make sure that you establish that relationship and cultivate it. And when they do need travel, and they know you and you've done a good job of communicating what you want to be known for, they might give you a call. That's my general advice. I mean, I do a lot more specific work for people, when we engage together, because everything is so unique and so specialized. But generally speaking, that's my best advice.
Okay, I know that we've got some people on here from Africa right now that I can see, and all across the United States. Tell me what you're available to do to help maybe my audience.
Yeah, well, I think what I could do best for small businesses is to help them define their brand. Sit down with them, do a deep dive, and help them really decide who they are, what they do, and why they do it. And work with them to develop the language that can allow them to express that. So many companies have a mission statement and a vision statement. It's just a piece of paper on the wall. It doesn't really inform how they talk to their customers. It doesn't really inform what their brand visuals look like, their logo and their ads. It doesn't really inform how their employees work and interact with their customers. They need that help, and they need to be able to define that. So I could help them do that. I could also help them then incorporate that language into their websites, into their social media. I can help them create a social media calendar plan so that they regularly and routinely are posting interesting information that their audience cares about.
But what's your biggest tip on social media? I mean, there's so many people out there that are touting like social media packages and social media content. And I mean, I must get a million little things a day on, buy this, buy that, and my $29 package. Like when you're going straight out to like, what do you think is the most important channel right now?
Most important channel? The most important channel is the one that has the most of your target audience on it.
Okay. Yeah. Your ideal client avatar. And I've been harping.
Where are they? If they're on Facebook, then that's your most important social channel. If they're on Instagram, then that's it just depends on your audience. Now, I think there's parts of your audience on many channels. And the mistake that many people make is like, well, I'm going to get Hootsuite, which is a program that allows you to simultaneously post on all of your channels, right? And they make the mistake of putting the same post across every one of their channels. Wrong. Right. Each one of those channels, Twitter has a very different audience and a very different format than Facebook. I would not post the same thing on Facebook that I would on Twitter. I would modify it to fit the audience and what they care about on that particular social channel. So that's another bit of advice that I would give.
I'm always really nervous about just having somebody manage my social media because I feel like it takes away from, I'm a big storyteller. And I feel like it takes away from my own voice. Is it important to keep your own tone or your own story when you hand it over to a third party? Because I mean, we've been in contact before. You've seen me. Some days I'm writing a paragraph about things and, I always let it out there, and how can somebody do that for me?
Well, I think that they could if you approached it almost like an editor and a reporter do for a newspaper, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the editor, you're in charge of the voice of that newspaper. I'm using an archaic, newspapers might go away, but their online presence is still there. But in any case, the editor's in charge of the voice. The reporter brings all sorts of information to the editor, but the editor shapes it, whittles it down, and it says, this is what's ready to be published. The editor works with the reporter to create a calendar, and a schedule for when things are going to be posted,
Right.
delivered, so that you're not writing, Christmas stories in April when you should be writing Easter stories. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
you can create
So
a
I
calendar.
one of the things I'm getting out of this then is you need to be careful about who you hire and where your media comes from, because maybe just a one-stop shop is not going to do the job. I know people are really interested in buying just, bundles of things, and that, but does that represent really your product line, or are you just trying to get something out there that's,
It's the difference between being transactional and being strategic.
Ooh, I like
So,
that. Transactional versus being strategic. Ooh,
yeah.
I like that a lot.
So you want to work with somebody, who's going to manage your social media, who's strategic in their thinking, and that they're going to sit down with you and they're going to say, first of all, what's your brand? What's going to be consistent with your brand in terms of content? Okay, great. We know that. That's A. B is, okay, let's go find that content and let's program a calendar that'll say, hey, each week we're going to post these things. And so you create a plan for how you're going to post those things. The next step is they develop that content and they come back to you and make sure that you review and approve it and that you're okay with that content before it goes out. And then you execute your plan. You start posting. But you also have to have, regular meetings with them, and you need to be, maybe you're not the one posting, but you need to watch carefully your social media so that you see how your audience is reacting to your posts.
Yeah.
And you need to have a plan for responding quickly to those posts so that you can cultivate that community that you're after.
Yeah, and all of this, all of your steps just blend in so well together, from knowing your ideal client avatar and your audience to being the ultimate source of information. This is, pretty much 8 steps, because we've talked about branding too, that really can build you up. But I feel like one of the major things that you're saying is you need to know what your plan is before you start. And
100%.
a lot of small businesses are just 5 steps ahead of the business. I'm the social media person. I'm the finance director. I'm
Right.
trying to find people to work for me. I'm running these shows with my lawnmower guy in the background. And how can you be jack of all trades when you're a small business?
It's hard. It's hard
to get over those hurdles, because most travel advisors and small tour operators and so forth, are wearing several different hats.
That's true. And when you first start out, you might not have the budget, but that doesn't mean you can't find experts out there that are sharing information like we are today that can help you learn. And you do the best job that you can until your business grows to the point where you're able to say, you know what, I need to step away from this and let somebody else handle it for me.
Yeah.
And somebody on board that can help you, or you can hire a freelancer that can help you. But you've got to carve out time for yourself as a business leader to sit down and be purposeful. You've got to do that. Otherwise, your business is going to run you instead of you running your business.
So be strategic. I love that. And have a purpose.
Yeah, be strategic, not transactional. Transactional says, I got to post something on Facebook. Strategic says,
what am I posting?
What's my message?
Yeah.
And what am I trying to accomplish? And is posting on Facebook going to help me do that?
Okay, real quick, because we're running out of time. Like, what's your final big message? Like, what could be the one big takeaway that we, I'd like everybody to leave with something. Although you've given us so many things today, but
I would say trust. If you don't remember anything that we talked about today, you've got to develop a relationship of trust with your clients. Do only those things that will help build trust. Think long term. Don't think right now. Think long term. How can I continue to build trust over time? Make sure that your actions right now are going to support that. Be transparent and continue to build that trust so that they will continue to do business with you. And I know we've had a short time today, and all of these topics I've written actually pretty extensively on my own blog. And so if you've got more questions that you weren't able to ask today, or you'd like to know more about my thoughts on various aspects of communications, you can visit www.jcs-communications.com. And the dash is the little hash mark. So jcs-communications.com.
Okay, Joel, you are a wealth of information. This was so fun hearing from you. I just feel like I picked up so many things, and I want all of you guys to jump over to the Luxury Travel University, join my group, because I'm constantly bringing on amazing people that can give you free tips. This was just like having therapy today, therapy with Joel. And Be sure to leave your comments in the questions, because if you have comments and you didn't ask them here and you feel like you've got some, I'll shoot them over to Joel and get the answer back to you. So thanks for joining us today, you guys. Thanks for putting up with my lawn mowing people who, just want to show up every time I have this. And it's great. So thanks, Joel. Any last words?
Pleasure. Remember, it's about trust, and look for me on my blog, and hopefully we'll connect out there in the ether soon.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Joel.